the vanishing echoes of Maybrook. Emily Parker had always chased storms, but nothing in her 22 years of studying meteorology had prepared her for the forest that awaited her in Maybrook.
Are you sure this is the place, Emily?
I think so. The reports, the anomalies, they all converge here. I need to see for myself. The town lay nestled among towering pines and mist-laden valleys, quiet as if holding its breath. Even the air seemed to thrum with anticipation, cold and heavy with unsaid things. Her equipment rattled softly in the trunk of her rental car, a weather station borrowed from the university lab, carefully packed with sensors, thermometers, and recording devices. She had imagined field trips before, but never like this, never with a feeling that the forest itself was waiting. As she stepped out onto the gravel road, fog curled around her ankles, thick and almost alive, curling like serpents into the underbrush. The townsfolk gave her worried glances, eyes darting behind curtains, murmuring about the disappearances, about children who had vanished without a trace.
Emily, you really don't think the stories are true, do you?
I don't know. I need data. And data doesn't care about rumours. She dragged her suitcase of instruments along the winding path leading to the forest's edge, each wheel crunching over frost-hardened leaves. The deeper she went, the colder the air became, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine resin, but also something faintly metallic, almost like ozone before a lightning strike. Then came the first anomaly. Her barometer spiked erratically, a needle jumping with a frantic, unexplainable energy. Her thermometer dipped sharply, then soared, as if the air itself could not decide on a temperature. Emily frowned, heart quickening. A low whisper rolled through the pines, barely audible but undeniably present. Emily froze, scanning the misty shadows, seeing movement where there should have been none. She told herself it was the wind, but the whisper came again, clearer this time, a name, soft and trembling, Emily.
Did you hear that, Emily?
Yes. But it can be no one should know I am here. I am alone. Her recorder flickered, light strobing in erratic patterns, and she noticed her compass spinning wildly. A chill ran down her spine. Every instinct screamed retreat, but curiosity unyielding, stubborn curiosity pushed her forward. Deeper into the misted forest she went, suitcase rattling, sensors beeping, capturing the impossible, the wind moving against its own direction, shadows dancing without source, a faint echo of children laughing far too far away, fading before she could locate it. Emily paused at a clearing where the fog seemed thicker, almost tangible. Her breath hung in clouds, forming shapes that almost looked like tiny hands reaching up from the ground. She shook her head violently. She was imagining things. It had to be her imagination. But then the whisper came again. Not a name this time, but a question. Why are you here? Emily's hand shook as she set down her instruments, the weight of the suitcase feeling like it carried the weight of the entire forest. Somewhere in the fog, a figure moved, a fleeting shape at the edge of her vision. She blinked. Done. She swallowed hard, telling herself she was fine. She was a scientist. Curiosity had brought her here, and it would guide her now. Still, the forest had a rhythm, a pulse, a consciousness perhaps, and she was certain for the first time in her life that it was aware of her presence. Emily adjusted her recorder and whispered to herself, "Let us see what you be hiding." Unseen eyes watched as she stepped further into the forest, into the thickening fog. And somewhere, deep within the pines, the first threads of the forest's secret began to stir. Emily had set up her equipment in the clearing, wires snaking like veins across the frost-covered ground. Every sensor beeped, hummed, and occasionally spat out readings she had never seen in the lab. The air was still, but her instruments screamed contradictions, temperatures plummeting then rising within seconds, wind speeds fluctuating without cause, barometric pressure twisting as if some invisible hand were needy.
Emily, this can be normal.
I know, but it is real. Look at the data. She crouched over the sensors, eyes scanning lines of numbers that jumped and shifted like living things. And then another whisper, closer this time, carried on the cold air, follow. Emily froze. Her pulse surged, yet every fibre of curiosity screamed at her to move forward. The forest seemed to breathe around her, mist curling and uncurling like invisible fingers. She began walking along a narrow path barely visible in the fog, suitcase in hand. Every step made the mist thicken, and shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally. Her recorder picked up faint echoes like children's laughter, but no child was in sight. Her eyes darted to a cluster of trees where the fog parted for a brief moment. There, she thought she saw movement. A child? No, just a trick of light. She shook her head and pressed on. The wind whispered again, carrying a cold, metallic tang that made her stomach churn. Instruments twitched, spinning dials like tiny compasses possessed. Emily's hands trembled as she jotted down notes, every nerve on edge. A sudden gust slammed through the clearing, scattering leaves and rattling her equipment. The forest fell silent immediately after, an oppressive, waiting silence that pressed against her ears. Emily felt eyes on her, though she saw nothing. She paused, listening. Her barometer had spiked off the charts. The thermometers flickered. Even the small camera she had placed on a tripod woke to life, capturing something she could not yet understand. The whisper returned, see before it is too late. Emily's curiosity pushed her deeper into the forest, the fog curling higher, almost swallowing her legs. Every step made her feel less like herself, more like an intruder in a world that was not meant for the living. Suddenly, her compass needle wavered violently, spinning as if caught in an invisible whirlpool. She stopped, heart hammering. The path behind her was gone, replaced by a wall of fog so dense she could barely see her own hands.
Emily, do you even know where you were going?
No, but I have to follow the signals. They were trying to tell me something. Then she noticed the first sun, a patch of frost on the forest floor, forming shapes that almost resembled tiny footprints. Small, child-sized, leading further into the mist, twisting and turning unpredictably. A strange vibration pulsed through the air. Her instruments hummed in perfect harmony, registering the impossible energy that had no source, patterns that defied physics. Emily felt the hair on her arms rise, every instinct screaming that she was on the edge of something beyond comprehension. And then a sudden shadow darted past, faster than any human, too precise to be the wind. Emily blinked. Gone. Her recorder captured a faint voice, barely audible, almost pleading, "Emily Dante, stop now." With trembling hands, she followed the path of the footprints. The forest seemed to bend around her, trees leaning as if to guide or perhaps to trap her. Each step carried her further from reality and closer to the secret hiding in the heart of Maybrook. The mist thickened to the point where visibility was almost zero. Emily stopped, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. Then she noticed a flicker of movement ahead, subtle, almost like a shadow winking in and out of existence. Her heart skipped. Was it the forest, a trick of light, or something else? Something alive. Watching. Waiting. And somewhere in that shadow, the first true echo of the forest's secret stirred. The deeper Emily ventured, the heavier the fog became, curling around her ankles like tendrils of some unseen creature. Each step felt measured, watched, as if the forest itself were counting her heartbeats. Her suitcase rattled with each movement, sensors beeping and flickering, trying desperately to make sense of what they recorded. Temperature shifts, air pressure anomalies, faint electrical charges, nothing should have behaved this way. Emily, Lisa, can you hear it? I hear something, yes. But it is hard to make sense of it. The whispers came again, weaving through the trees like threads of silk, soft but insistent. Follow, follow, follow. This sounded almost like children, but there was something off, too melodic, too deliberate. She paused, hand on her recorder, trying to capture the sounds. But as she adjusted the dials, the chill brushed her neck, a whisper so close it might have been a breath. Emily, her name, drawn out, almost a warning. Emily pressed forward, heart pounding. The trees seemed to lean toward her, shadows stretching unnaturally, branches curling like fingers pointing, guiding or perhaps warning her. Every step felt heavier, as if gravity itself had thickened. Then came a sound that froze her blood, laughter. Children laughing, far away but impossibly clear. It twisted in the fog, fading, returning, teasing her. She spun around. Nothing. Her instruments reacted violently. Thermometers spiked, barometers dived, and a small camera she had placed on a branch captured a flicker movement that wasn't there before. A shadow, tall and thin, slipping between the misted trunks. Emily swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. "It's just anomalies," she whispered. Data anomalies, nothing more. But every instinct screamed otherwise. The forest had a rhythm, a pulse. She felt it beneath her feet, in the hum of the fog and the whispers that threaded her name. She followed the whispers, suitcase scraping over roots and fallen leaves. Tape seemed to flicker at the edges of her vision, figures that vanished when she looked directly at them. Yet the whispers persisted, drawing her deeper, urging her to see. At a sudden bend, the fog parted just enough to reveal a small, abandoned cabin. Its wood was grey, warped by years of weather, yet the windows glimmered faintly. Inside, shadows danced without light, moving as if alive. Emily's pulse raced. Instruments beeped erratically, displaying readings she couldn't even begin to interpret. A faint metallic smell hung in the air, like rain before a lightning storm, electrifying every nerve. A soft knock echoed from the cabin door. Not a normal knock, timed, deliberate enough to make her think it had a mind of its own. Her hand shook as she reached for the handle, hesitant yet compelled by an unnameable need. Inside, the cabin was empty, or so it seemed. Shadows twisted unnaturally on the walls. The air was thick, alive, vibrating faintly as if resonating with the energy her instruments recorded outside. Then she noticed the floorboards, faint imprints, child-sized, leading in a spiral toward the back of the cabin. The whispers coalesced, almost pleading, almost warning. "Do not stop, do not leave." Emily's eyes widened. Each imprint pulsed faintly, glowing for a fraction of a second before fading into the wood. She took a step closer, drawn in by the impossible sight. The suitcase rattled, lights flickering in rhythm with her heartbeat. Suddenly, the shadow shifted. One figure, a child-shaped silhouette, stopped in the center of the spiral. It raised its hand, beckoning her, and for a moment Emily felt a connection, a pulse of understanding that chilled her to the bone. Her voice trembled. I want to help, but how? The shadow didn't answer, only stared, and in the silence, the whispering forest seemed to inhale, drawing her deeper into its secret. Emily's hands trembled as she stepped further into the spiral of faintly glowing imprints. Each footfall echoed in the cabin, yet the sound felt absorbed by the walls themselves, swallowed before reaching her ears. The whispers intensified, weaving around her, now distinct voices overlapping. Come see, follow, a thousand threads of sound tugged at her mind, threatening to pull her into the fog itself.
Emily, Dante, please be careful.
I have to, I need to know Clara. Then it appeared. A figure, thin and elongated, moving with an unnatural grace. It hovered slightly above the ground, edges flickering like smoke in the dim cabin light. Emily froze, suitcase half raised, sensors beeping wildly. The figure tilted its head, observing her. No face, only a shifting darkness, yet Emily felt its gaze pierce her thoughts. Her breath hitched, heart hammering against her ribcage. A voice, not audible but unmistakable, threaded into her mind. You shouldn't have come. Her instinct screamed to run, but curiosity rooted her in place. Every rational thought drowned beneath a tide of awe and terror. The suitcase rattled violently, as if warning her to stop, but perhaps urging her forward. Emily inched closer, speaking softly to herself, a mantra against fear. I am a scientist. I observe. I record. I understand. Yet the air vibrated with resistance, almost pushing back against her presence. The figure moved suddenly, circling her, and for a moment the cabin seemed to dissolve. Shadows stretched toward her, floorboards undulating like liquid. She staggered, heart hammering, but kept her focus on the glowing footprints. Then a whisper, sharper now, slicing through her thoughts. Do you see? Emily looked around. Shapes materialized in the fog outside, the windows twisting, flickering figures that mimicked human movement within impossible ways. Her instruments went haywire. Thermometers spiked, barometers dived, and the small camera flickered, capturing images that twisted and shimmered. Emily realized the patterns she saw were not random, they were signals, messages encoded in the forest itself. A chill ran down her spine. The whispers grew louder, almost a chant. Follow, understand, you cannot leave yet. She felt a pressure in her chest, as if the forest demanded obedience, knowledge, submission. Emily took a step back. The figure shifted with her, fluid, shadowed, perfectly synchronized. Then, without warning, it lunged or perhaps invited her toward the clearing behind the cabin. She stumbled but caught herself, compelled beyond fear. Outside, the fog had thickened to a near solid wall. Shapes danced within it, indistinct but unmistakably alive. Every sound of wind, leaves, the faint echo of her own breath was amplified, distorted, and carried whispers she could barely comprehend. She opened her recorder. The whispers were caught layered atop one another. She could hear them now clearly, children's voices, adult voices, and something deeper, something older, almost eternal. They spoke of storms, of patterns in the wind, of echoes lost and found. Emily felt her mind stretch, pulled by the rhythm of the forest. Her body trembled as visions flickered at the edge of perception, images of herself walking this path before, different yet the same, patterns repeating in time she could not fully measure. The figure spoke again, mentally, a single thought resonating: choose, observe, or become the echo. Emily's stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed terror, yet every fibre of her being quivered with the need to see, to understand. And then the whispering ceased abruptly, leaving a silence so heavy pressed on her ears, her chest, her very soul. The forest waited, watching, patient, and Emily realized she had crossed a threshold she could never return from unscathed. Emily stood frozen as the silence pressed against her, heavy as wet cloth. The mist curled around the trees, shaping itself into impossible geometries, spirals that seemed almost deliberate, almost intelligent. Her instruments continued their frantic dance. Beeping, flickering, recording anomalies that defied every lore she had learned at the university. Temperatures inverted, wind readings swung back and forth, as though the forest was breathing in curded pulses.
Emily, are you alright? Your voice is trembling.
I am okay, just this place that's alive in a way I can't explain. She adjusted her sensors, following the faint glow of the footprints that spiraled out from the cabin. Each print pulsed, almost like a heartbeat, and as she moved closer, patterns emerged, intricate symbols etched into frost on the forest floor, too precise to be natural. Emily crouched, tracing one of the symbols with a gloved hand. The frost shimmered, rearranging itself as she touched it. Her pulse surged, the whispers returned, melodic and urgent, CC understand. The suitcase rattled, sensors blinking wildly, as though the forest itself were responding to her presence. Emily's mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible data with the tangible sensations surrounding her. Then, movement quick, fleeting, danced at the edge of her vision. Shadow figures, delicate and precise, flitted between trees. They mimicked her movements, mirroring her curiosity and fear in uncanny synchronization. A whisper, soft but commanding, echoed from the mist, patterns everywhere hidden. Follow. Emily shivered. The forest was guiding her or testing her. Each footprint, each frost symbol seemed to form a map she could barely decipher. She took a deep breath and followed the trail deeper into the mist. The whispers grew louder, layering themselves upon one another in a complex cadence that made her head spin. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythm, her vision widening to capture shapes just beyond comprehension. Then the mist parted briefly, revealing a clearing. In its centre, a single tree stood alone, branches twisted in impossible angles, glowing faintly with an otherworldly luminescence. Symbols covered its bark, spiraling upward like a living code. Emily's breath caught. The patterns pulsed in sync with the whispers. She realized with a shock that the forest's movements, the anomalies, even the shadows, they were all part of a single, living sequence, a language she had only begun to perceive. She raised her senses, capturing readings at their highest sensitivity. Every device screamed in protest, yet the data seemed to form coherent cluster signals embedded in nature itself. The forest was speaking, and she was finally beginning to hear. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the clearing, faster than her eyes could follow. The mist thickened instantly, enveloping her in a suffocating fog that seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. Emily's hand shook violently, her instruments beeped in frantic alarm. The whispers turned urgent, almost frantic. Do not leave, follow the sequence, understand. The frost beneath her feet shifted, forming new symbols in real time, spiraling toward the tree as if throwing her into a hidden truth. Her pulse raced, mind straining to grasp the patterns. She felt drawn forward, an irresistible pull toward the center of the clearing. Each step brought the tree closer, and with it a revelation she wasn't sure she wanted to witness. A sudden gust of wind roared through the clearing, carrying whispers in multiple voices, chanting the same word over and over. Emily, her stomach dropped. The forest was no longer just a backdrop, it was aware. Watching. Waiting. Emily froze, suitcase rattling violently, frost symbols glowing brighter, shadows converging toward the tree. And in that instant, she understood that whatever secret the forest held, it demanded more than curiosity, it demanded surrender. And she was on the threshold of something she could never undo. Emily's fingers hovered over the glowing frost symbols, heart hammering. The forest felt alive around her, each rustle and sigh of wind carrying a message she couldn't yet fully decipher. Her suitcase beat erratically, lights flickering in sequences that seemed deliberate, almost like Morse code. Emily squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of the strange pulses. Then she saw it, a faint signal hidden within the chaos of readings, a pattern repeating itself across devices. It was subtle, elusive, but unmistakable. Something, or someone, was communicating through the forest itself.
Emily, you were not imagining this, are you?
No, it is real. I don't know what it is yet, but it is here. The whispers returned, threaded with the signal. Follow, interpret, understand. Emily felt a pull, magnetic, drawing her toward a dense cluster of trees where the mist thickened and the air vibrated faintly. She stepped forward cautiously. Each footfall was mirrored by subtle flickers in the fog, shadows bending in ways that made no sense. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile science with the surreal reality pressing in from every direction. Suddenly, the suitcase rattled violently, almost throwing her off balance. She grabbed it hard in her throat and saw the reading spike beyond anything she had ever recorded. A message seemed encoded within the anomalies, a rhythm pulsing through temperature shifts, wind gusts, and electrical disturbances. Emily knelt, adjusting her devices, fingers shaking. As she aligned the sensors, the signal became clear. A series of tones, faint but distinct, harmonized with the whispers. She felt the forest speaking in a language older than words, older than memory. A shadow flitted past her peripheral vision. She spun, but the clearing was empty. The mist shimmered, and the frost symbols pulsed in time with the hidden signal, forming a path deeper into the woods. The forest seemed to respond to her every thought. When she hesitated, the whispers coiled around her mind like smoke, urging, questioning, warning. Each pulse from her equipment echoed in her chest, like a second heartbeat not her own. Then, a gust of wind, unnatural in its direction, slammed through the clearing, carrying the scent of ozone and wet earth. The symbols on the ground rearranged themselves before her eyes, spelling out letters she couldn't read aloud, yet somehow understood. Emily whispered, "It is a message from the forest," or through the forest did her voice tremble, but curiosity propelled her forward. Every rational thought told her to run, but she couldn't. She needed to know. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced. Shapes became distinct figures, childlike silhouettes, elongated and fluid. They circled her, yet made no sound. The whispers sharpened, demanding attention. The code followed, "Do not falter." Emily's pulse raced. Each instrument beeped in chaotic harmony, forming a rhythm that resonated with the forest itself. Her eyes widened as the frost symbols lit up, revealing a spiraling path toward a clearing she hadn't noticed before. The hidden signal pulsed once sharply, and then paused. Silence pressed in, heavy and expectant. Emily understood that the forest had given her a choice: follow the signal further or retreat and risk never understanding the truth it carried. Her breath caught. She adjusted her grip on the suitcase, feeling the instruments vibrate alive with the forest's pulse. And as she stepped toward the clearing, a whisper, clearer than ever, cut through the mist: "Your next step will change everything." Emily stepped into the clearing, heart hammering in her chest, suitcase clutched tightly. The mist swirled around her like liquid smoke, carrying with it whispers that seemed to echo her own thoughts. The frost symbols beneath her feet glowed brighter, forming intricate patterns that spiraled outward. Each pulse synced with the hidden signal she had been chasing, and the rhythm seemed almost alive, vibrating through the soles of her boots. Then she saw it emerging from the center of the clearing, a presence both delicate and terrifying. A shifting silhouette, edges blurred and flickering, moving with a grace that defied reality. Emily froze, suitcase rattling violently, instruments beeping in urgent sync. The figure tilted its form, as if acknowledging her, and the mist seemed to bend around it, bending her perception with it. A whisper threaded directly into her mind: "You have come far, but do you understand?" The voice was neither male nor female, yet it resonated with every corner of her consciousness. Emily's breath caught. She took a tentative step forward, eyes wide. Each movement caused the clearing to ripple, shadows twisting unnaturally, shapes flickering at the edge of her vision. The suitcase beat violently, instruments spiking beyond their calibrated limits. She realized that the signal was reacting to her presence, bending the environment, the very air around her, like a living code responding to her actions. Then the shadows coalesced into forms resembling people, some small, some tall, all fluid and flickering. They mirrored her movements in uncanny harmony, yet none spoke aloud. Their presence pressed against her mind, filling her with both awe and terror. Emily whispered to herself, "I must record, I must understand." She raised her instruments, documenting every anomaly, every flicker, every pulse. And the forest seemed to hum in approval, or perhaps in warning. Suddenly, the clearing expanded, as if space itself had stretched. Emily felt herself drawn toward the center where the presence loomed largest. The whispers coalesced into a chant, repeating a single phrase: "See, no, become." A cold wind swirled around her, carrying scent she could not identify as own, earth, something metallic. The frost symbols underfoot rearranged themselves with every heartbeat, forming a new pattern that pulsed in resonance with the hidden signal. Emily staggered, mind straining to process the stimuli. The presence tilted closer, edges shimmering, almost breathing, almost thinking. The whisper inside her mind grew urgent: "Follow the pattern or be lost forever." She hesitated, suitcase trembling in her grip, as the forest pressed in like a living entity. Every shadow, every pulse of light, every whisper was a test, measuring her intent, her focus, her very essence. And then the figure reached up for, perhaps invited her, and the clearing shimmered. The mist thickened, folding around her, warping the air. Emily felt herself teetering on the edge of something impossible, something she could neither run from nor fully comprehend. Her heartbeat thundered as the shadows and light spiraled together. And in that moment, Emily understood the first truth of the forest. It was alive, aware, and waiting for her choice. One wrong step, one misjudgment, and she would become another echo within the clearing. Emily's feet moved almost on their own, drawn along the path that had revealed itself in frost and mist. The hidden signal pulsed with every heartbeat, guiding her deeper into the forest's labyrinth. The clearing behind her seemed to vanish, swallowed by mist. Shadows stretched unnaturally, curling around trees like tendrils, while the whisper she had been following now merged into a symphony, urgent, hypnotic, commanding. Her suitcase beat violently, sensors straining, instruments struggling to capture the anomalies. Emily adjusted the dials, heart racing, trying to translate the pulses into something intelligible. Every reading, every flicker, every whisper insisted: "Follow the spiral, understand." The mist thickened, curling around her like smoke. She glimpsed lights, faint phosphorescent, dancing in arcs above the forest floor, forming a spiral pattern. The trail twisted inward, drawing her toward a center she could not see. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. She spun, but it vanished. The whisper sharpened, threading through her mind: "Do not falter, see the spiral, do not break the rhythm." Emily's pulse quickened. She felt the forest's will pressing against her thoughts. She adjusted her instruments again, tracing the light's path, and realized with a shiver that each pulse, each flicker, each anomaly followed a code, a spiraling pattern encoded in the very air and mist. The forest was speaking, teaching, perhaps testing. Emily's eyes widened. The spiral wasn't just visual, it was temporal. Shadows moved in strange sync, bending perception, stretching seconds into eternities, compressing minutes into flashes. She felt herself slipping between rhythms, between layers of reality. Her suitcase emitted a high-pitched tone, and frost symbols around her feet rearranged themselves into sharper, more complex formations. She bent down, tracing the shapes, trying to map them with her instruments. The pulse the hidden signal was now almost unbearable, thrumming in her chest like a second heartbeat. Then the mist parted just enough to reveal a tree unlike any other. Its bark glowed faintly, etched with symbols that pulsed in time with the spiral. Shadows gathered at its base, twisting and writhing, yet somehow forming a path that invited her forward. Emily's breath caught. The whispers escalated, now clear, almost commanding. Enter the spiral, witness become her mind reeled. Curiosity warred with fear, each step forward a defiance of every rational instinct. She followed the spiral inward, mist coiling around her limbs, pressing against her skin. The forest itself seemed to pulse with life, each shadow and light forming a living chord. She was no longer just observing, she was a part of the pattern. Suddenly, the light of the spiral flared, blinding and intense. Emily stumbled, suitcase skidding across the forest, sensors screaming. She realized the spiral was not just a path, it was a revelation, a conduit for something vast, beyond comprehension. The shadows surged, pressing inward, the whispers crescendoed, see, understand, transform. Emily's heart raced. Every instinct screamed to retreat, yet she could not, driven by a force both terrifying and irresistible. And in that instant, the spiral pulsed once, sharply illuminating the forest with a brilliance that seemed to fracture reality itself. Emily froze, aware that the next step would not just reveal the forest as secret, it might change her irrevocably. Emily stood at the heart of the spiral, suitcase trembling in her hands. The forest no longer felt like an environment, it felt like a living, breathing consciousness pressing against her senses. The hidden signal pulsed violently now, reverberating through her instruments and through her very bones. Every heartbeat of the forest synced with hers, creating a rhythm she could not escape. The whispers coalesced into words, sharp and urgent, feel, understand, become one. Emily's mind swirled, thoughts colliding with sensations she had no names for, emotions she could not contain. The mist thickened, forming shapes around her that flickered between animal, human, and something unnameable. Each shape pulsed in resonance with the hidden signal, a reflection of the forest's heartbeat made visible. Emily's fingers brushed the frost symbols, and a shock ran through her, not painful but electrifying. She saw flashes, visions of past storms, strange weather patterns, anomalies recorded in her university lab, melding with the forest's pulse in impossible ways. A shadow coiled around her legs, soft and warm like a breath. She looked down and gasped, an ephemeral hand-like form, reaching, inviting, tethering her to the spiral. The suitcase beat frantically, lights flickering in chaotic harmony with the forest. Emily whispered, voice shaking, I feel it inside me. The rhythm was no longer external, it was internal, coursing through her chest, her veins, threading her consciousness into the forest itself. The figures in the mist mirrored her movements exactly, yet independently, as if testing her, studying her intent. The whispers intensified, did not resist or be lost to panic, and all collided in her mind, but she forced herself to breathe, to attune, to understand. Her instruments registered anomalies beyond any known scale, magnetic pulses, temperature spikes, electromagnetic distortions, yet it was more than science. It was communication, comprehension, and awareness older than the forest itself. Emily realized, trembling, that the spiral, the hidden signal, the mist, the shadows, they were all threads of the same pulse. A pulse she could not ignore, a pulse she was now part of. The forest seemed to lean closer, shaping the air, bending light, twisting reality. Her heartbeat raced, matching the rhythm, sinking, merging, until she could not tell where she ended and the forest began. Then, with a sudden clarity, the pulse sharpened like a knife through her chest. The whispers cut through the mist, see what lies beneath or remain forever apart. Emily felt a door open within her mind, a vision of something immense, hidden, and ancient. The suitcase clattered to the ground, instruments glowing wildly. Emily knelt, unable to move, as the spiral center shimmered with light, revealing shadows that bent, twisted, and writhed into shapes she could neither name nor forget. And in that instant, Emily understood the pulse within the forest was not just a signal, it was a consciousness, vast, patient, waiting for her choice. One step closer, one misstep, and the forest would either embrace her or consume her entirely. Emily's knees hit the frost-covered ground as the spiral pulsed violently around her. Light and shadow danced in impossible patterns, bending her perception, twisting the very air into living code. The whispers surged, no longer just voices, but a choir of consciousness, enveloping her mind. You have come, now see, now choose it. Her heartbeat synced perfectly with the forest, every pulse a tether between herself and the immense, ancient presence. Emily looked up at the heart of the spiral, where the mist parted to reveal an entity unlike anything she had imagined. A vast, shifting form of light, shadow, and vibration, pulsating in time with the hidden signal and with her own pulse. The suitcase lay forgotten at her side, instruments glowing erratically. Emily reached out instinctively, fingers trembling, and the entity responded, edges shimmering, expanding and contracting like a living heartbeat. A thought not spoken, yet crystal clear, threaded into her mind. To understand is to join, to resist is to vanish. A panic surged, but so did all. She realized that science alone could not grasp this presence, it demanded her full consciousness. The forest itself seemed to lean closer, shadows wrapping around her, mist pressing softly against her skin. Every nerve screamed, every instinct warned, yet her curiosity propelled her forward, hand extended. Light flared. The pulse sharpened. Emily felt herself dissolve not physically, but mentally, her perception stretching, bending, aligning with the entity's rhythm. Memories, sensations, even her understanding of time melded into the spiral. She glimpsed vision storm anomalies, impossible weather patterns, frost symbols, and signals she had traced from her university lab, all interconnected threads of the forest's consciousness reaching into reality, past and present. A whisper, intimate and thunderous, "You are the pulse now, you are the heart." Emily realized that she no longer existed as a separate observer. She was both participant and witness, merged into the living code of the forest. The spiral-esque light dimmed and then stabilized into a harmonious glow, enveloping her entirely. Instruments at her side powered down, sensors quiet, yet the pulse continued within her and through her, a rhythm that had always been part of the forest's hidden signal. Emily exhaled, mind expanded, aware that the forest was no longer an external mystery but an intimate force within her perception. The whisper softened, becoming a steady hum, guiding her understanding of nature, patterns, and unseen energies. And then, as the mist thinned and shadows receded, she saw the forest as it truly was, an endless network of life, consciousness, and pulse, infinitely complex, infinitely patient. And she, now, was its part forever, a pulse within the heart of the forest. A final whisper echoed, fading into the distance. "You chose, and now you remain between the world and the pulse." Emily's eyes closed, the forest breathing around her, and the hidden signal continued its eternal rhythm, unbroken, unyielding, and profoundly alive.